Okay, I have a treat for the non-geologists in the room, because I'm not a geologist. Whilst I owe my existence and everything you've all been here listening to, we all owe to geologists, I'm not going to talk about geology. So hopefully you will understand what can in certain circumstances be a difficult to understand story, which is the DGR Global Group. Now there's a fair bit of information in this prezzo that you don't all necessarily have to absorb on the spot, but what I recommend you do is go to our website and download the presentation from the Brisbane conference, which is going to be the same as this one. Okay. So what I want to give you is some simple messages. What do we do? How do we do it? Why do we do it? What's in it for you? Why should you even have a look at it? So basically DGR is a spread bet. Okay, it's not a single project or a single commodity or a single country company or an investment opportunity. So we're in the resources index, we're ASX listed, but we're not a mining company. We don't want to be a mining company. What we do is generate projects, we incubate them, and we basically give birth to other mining companies. So this is our group structure. Everything on this side is what I call the pipeline. Okay, so those are our infant children, if you like. These are the children which are listed on various exchanges around the world. So an investment in DGR Global is essentially giving you exposure to everything on this slide. Now that becomes important to remember at the back end when I give a quick run through of what our most impressive children have been up to lately. So what we do is, as I say, generate an idea, generate an exploration concept, look at commodity trends, look at global trends, and I'll talk about that in a minute. And we formulate an idea. If we kick the tires on that idea and think that it's got legs, then basically we'll form a company, raise some funds, put management in it, look to ASX list it. Then of course you then test your exploration hypotheses, and you hope basically, you hope to go up this ladder here, or this sort of spiral, going from concept to reality. Now that essentially is where we're at within our group. So some of these companies are yet to get to the point where you've defined a JORC resource. SolGold is the standout exception. A couple of our companies have gone past that point and are nearing or at production. And that's the sort of pipeline. An investment into DGR Global, from a shareholder's point of view, is really an investment into diversity. So we take away a lot of the decisions you might have to make about commodity, country risk, exchange risk, currency, and so we offer, as I said, more or less a spread bet. So it's an opportunity to look at a natural resources investment. This is a great thing to be telling your kids or grandkids. Invest $500 every month or quarter, stick it in your third drawer and come back and look at it in 5 years' time. Start investing in it through your self-managed super fund and come back and look at it in 5 years' time. DGR is not a make 10 times your money overnight opportunity. It's a long-term value accretive investment. And that is because it's got multiple parts. And this gives you the opportunity, if you like the story, to invest through DGR, but you can also invest on the nose, right? You can take the trifecta and put some on the nose. This is the commodity diversity we have within the group so far to date. So we would have what I would consider to be a mixture of traditional commodities, gas, iron ore, bauxite, gold, copper, lead, and what you'd think of as new age technology-driven minerals like lithium and cobalt, and to some extent tin and nickel. We're in a diverse range of operational theatres throughout the world, Africa, South America, Australia. We've got interest back in the Solomons. We're listed on exchanges in Canada, London and Australia. Ecuador is somewhere that we're really opening up. And Nick May, my boss, will be here to specifically talk about SolGold, which was DGR's original spin-out vehicle. At 12:30 or thereabouts. And Ecuador and SolGold is a really interesting story, which definitely worth having a look at. Not the easiest thing to invest in because it's listed on the London Exchange and the Canadian Exchange. So if you've got a broker set up for that, great. If you don't, DGR and its share price basically acts as a proxy. So that's something to bear in mind. One of the reasons why you might look at this is because you can buy something for cheaper than it's valued at. So the white line represents the DGR Global share price. The Manhattan represents the net tangible asset backing against the share price. So you're buying essentially a bargain. And notwithstanding the changes in the underlying values, you can see that the ratio essentially, or the level of discount at this point, has remained fairly consistent. Part of my job will be to change that over time by having a bigger stable and a more diverse stable and perhaps a different range of resource commodities which backs and makes up that net tangible asset backing. Okay, this is why we do what we do. So we've looked at the mega trends that are emerging in the world, and I've looked through to the year 2050 and had a look at the sort of things, and I had a look around the room. Most of you, a bit like me, would have grown up in a household with one rotary dial telephone. And all you could have done with that was dial your friend who had a rotary dial telephone. And if all the planets were aligned, I'd get on my bicycle and ride to his house. Now at 15, that was the extent of my universe. It was how far could I ride my bicycle and who else could I contact with a rotary dial telephone. At 15, my son held the universe in his hand. And that's simultaneously wonderful and terrifying. But that is the rate of technological and societal change over a period of 30 years. And that pace of change, in our view, isn't necessarily going to slow down. So the things that we see continuing to grow the demand for resources are these megatrends. And when you drill down on this slightly, you don't even need to believe me or believe DGR Global. You can believe, wrong button again, sorry. You can believe these people, okay? The world population is expected by 2050 to be nearly 10 billion. Double the people aged 60 or more, of which I hope to be one by then. Increasing life expectancies, but also particularly in emerging economies where life expectancies are currently shorter than in the Western world. 32 economies will account for 85% of the global GDP. Now, when you go through a lot of this stuff, you'll find some common themes, and the common themes are infrastructure, building, healthcare, and energy is the big one. Everything points to energy in the future, particularly the emergence of certain economies, and particularly all of the expectations around better living standards, healthcare, more people to look after, and so on. So energy becomes a recurrent theme. When you look at the big picture issues within that, so the macro level issues, one that really surprised me is that India is expected to be more populous than China. Okay, so by 2030 only, the world population is expected to be 8.6 billion. And by 2040, the emerging economies of today are expected to be larger than the G7 economies of today. Okay, and 2.5 billion people will be lifted from low incomes by 2040. They all want electricity, they all want one of these, they all want better living standards, better construction, better infrastructure, better transport, so on and so forth. When you look at the micro grassroots level issues, every person currently in the world consumes 16 kilograms of extracted resources a day. When you look at that in a developed country, it's 57 kilograms a person. Those statistics are growing. That rate of growth is continuing, and currently a newborn will require all of these things. And that, as I say, is continuing to grow. My point here really is that we're not manufacturing a widget. None of us that are here talking to you are manufacturing a widget and trying to get you to buy it via marketing. We as a resources industry are being demand pulled, and these are the factors underlying that demand. Those factors, in our view, aren't going to change the demand for resources, and those are the reasons why, essentially. All right, so as I said, I just want to talk about what's going on within our portfolio of listed entities. Rio Tinto in 2017 produced this graph which said these are the commodities that are most likely to be affected by changes in technology. Now, within our stable, we have the top 6 of those commodities covered. I won't go into Sol Gold in too much detail because, as I say, you'll have a separate presentation on this by Nick Mather. No one more qualified to talk about it than him. But basically, we've got a 3 billion tonne copper gold porphyry deposit in Ecuador. SolGold's strategy is Ecuador. Okay, it's got a project that's advanced, but it also has 72 other tenements throughout Ecuador. And within that package, we've identified another 12 priority targets, a number of which are gold-only targets. So SolGold is more than a one-trick pony. It's also got interests in Australia and in the Solomon Islands. Iron Ridge Resources, which is listed on AIM, so again, not necessarily straightforward to get, but you can obviously get exposure through DGR, which owns 22% of the company. It's also got Sumitomo and Assor as cornerstone shareholders. SolGold has BHP and Newcrest as shareholders, so you're rubbing shoulders in good company in these companies. We have basically an African focus with Iron Ridge, lithium and gold. We're basically in the first quarter of next year looking to have a maiden resource produced for our lithium project in Ghana. The big advantages of that particular project are its logistics. It's adjacent to high voltage power. It's adjacent to bitumen roadway, which takes you to the port. It's got deep sea port. So it's one thing to have a great project. It's another to be able to actually practically do something with it from a developmental and logistical point of view. But in my view, the jewel in the crown for Iron Ridge is its gold projects, particularly in the Ivory Coast and particularly the Zaranu Gold Project. Now, this is a project that we picked up last year as a result of our African focus and contacts we made throughout Africa. And I've been used to seeing artisanal mining activities in Africa with hand tools. This is artisanal illegal mining with an excavator. So we've had to kick all these people off. This is sort of 10 to 15 metres in places where people have been, artisanal mining. And we have now picked up this project with a 400 square kilometre, 400 square kilometre footprint, 40 kilometres of strike. We've done a lot of surface and trench sampling. Initial results are extremely good. What we're now doing is designing a drill program. We'll be drilling that particular project within 6 months, probably hopefully between now and Christmas, but it's Africa. Some of these things take some time. Now this, whilst it's the jewel in the crown, is one of only 3 separate gold project areas that we have within the Ivory Coast. Armour Energy is our oil and gas company focused in Australia, mainly Queensland, but also has a tenement footprint into the Northern Territory. We floated that company in 2012 with an area under acreage in the Northern Territory in Queensland, which was bigger than England. And it's taken a fair while, and there's been a little bit of girlfriend-boyfriend hand-holding, but finally Santos has taken us to the island, done a $95 million joint venture deal with us in relation to part of that acreage. In the meantime, we acquired from Origin Energy in 2015 this a facility in Queensland near Roma called the Kincora Gas Project. We bought it as a mothballed asset. We've basically spent time and money putting that back into production, and what we're now doing with Armour is gearing up the production and exploiting effectively the fields that were left behind untested. So we think that between the virgin sort of territory up in the north of Australia and the untested areas in Kincora, Armour Energy is sort of poised to really hit its straps, both from an exploration but also from a production and cash flow point of view over the next sort of 12 to 18 months. We're actively drilling right now. We've got 2 production wells being drilled adjacent to the Kincora gas facility. Dark Horse Resources is one of our more formative children. It's sort of started looking for gold in the Carlin Trend. We had 7 projects in the Carlin Trend and hit nothing, which I can't explain. It's a bit like having 7 houses on, the bay here in Sydney and losing money on every one. We reinvented that company with the help of a wonderful geologist in Queensland, Neil Stewart, to focus on South America, particularly Argentina, and we now have a suite of gold projects in Argentina. We also have exposure to a lithium brine project in Argentina, but we've got within one of those gold projects, the largest and last untested volcanic caldera type formation within Argentina. So we're looking to drill that, probably likely to be early 2020. Oztin Mining, we have a small mine in Tasmania which is currently on care and maintenance. We have the 5th largest unmined, if you like, hard rock tin deposit in New South Wales. We have exposure to cobalt in Queensland, but that's a company that, again, we may well be looking to reshape to some extent. Very few exploration companies, if you're new to this industry, actually succeed on the assets that they start with. Most require some sort of fleet-footed management to be able to opportunistically or strategically pick up alternatives to provide risk management. An unlisted opportunity that we have is Army Uganda, and basically that's an oil project in Uganda, obviously, and it's in a great neighbourhood, as you can see by the map there. We'll be looking to drill that next year. And lastly, Orban Resources is a public but yet to be listed entity which has got a suite of assets in mainly Queensland and one in the Northern Territory, which is focused on that whole suite of commodities there.